Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of AI Interconnect, the podcast where we dive deep with founders, investors, and innovators shaping the future of real estate, AI, and emerging technology. And today, I'm joined by someone who's been on the front line of early stage innovation for over a decade. He has backed over 500 startups, blends deep operational experience with a system thinking approach, and is constantly pushing the boundaries of where technology is heading, especially when it comes to emerging tech and AI agents. I'm thrilled to welcome David Mandel, a managing partner at Emerging Venture. And David, great to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Laurent. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for that warm welcome.
Very nice. My pleasure. And let's start. Let's start from. Always like to start from the beginning. You have had a really unique path into venture capital, with experience as both an operator and investor. Can you share a bit about your personal journey? What pulled you into the startup world in the first place?
Right? Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Happy to. And actually, to clarify, I would say it's kind of the opposite of unique. Being in this space, about half, or maybe more than half, of those working as investors in the venture space and in the broader startup investing ecosystem are former operators. It's quite a common path to go from operator to investor. And the other half of investors come the traditional path, coming in as some kind of junior role in investment banking or in a VC firm or PE firm and working their way up to eventually being a partner. So it's not uncommon, although it is my path. And for more background, so yes, I kind of went full circle in the technology space and AI in particular. Back in the late 80s, I was fascinated with AI as a college student. And I was a dual major of applied math and computer science, with specifically the idea of to do something with AI. There was some things going on in the space at the time, and it's nothing like what we have today. And it seemed a little interesting. And then as I dug deeper, I realized it wasn't there. And to make that story short, got my undergraduate degree, went on um, to a graduate program, uh, got the master's, passed the master's comp, dropped out of the doctorate program right after getting passing the master's comp at a SC. Didn't stay for the doctorate. Got the master's actually at my other university at Cal State Northridge, and dropped out of the SC doctorate program in math because it's right when everything turned south for academics and research. It's when the Cold War was over, engineers everywhere were being laid off. There was really no work for someone with an advanced degree in math other than probably teaching. And there was an oversupply, so I went into business. And turned out pretty well. Built and exited four different businesses in the Southern California area, all underwriting kind of businesses, balance sheet companies in finance and insurance. So I was a lifelong underwriter. I spent my life somewhat using my skills from math to build better underwriting tools and better ways of thinking about risk, and successfully built, say, four different businesses, had four different exits. But before my last two exits, if you go back to 2011, 2012, that's where the current story starts. So at that time, I still had two companies at that time. I had a subprime auto lender, which was a regional player financing used cars primarily through car dealers to end consumers. And then I had a pretty large California only auto insurance underwriter, and we were insuring at most times over 1 million cars on the road at any moment. We we're writing over 30,000 new policies a month. It was all automated. So other than the claims side, we had over 600 employees near the end there. But the both of the businesses were high volume of transactional activity. We're really IT companies. We're really, you know, B2B software companies that happen to be in the insurance business or the finance business. It was really all about the technology. And in that role, we are constantly looking for a technological edge. We are looking for some better data or better tools to make business smoother for our partners giving us the business and to underwrite smarter. And in that, that's around 2011, 2012, where I started to see some vendors come to us that were very different than the traditional vendors in the insurance and finance space, and providing tools that look like magic and look like the things I wanted to be able to do 30 years earlier when I was a student. And that got me back interested in AI and in technology, because for a while before that, I would, my head was buried in our businesses. I would go to conferences about, claims laws and things like that, and not technology conferences. And when I started to see what these vendors can do, for example, with natural language processing, where we would have a vendor come in, take our entire claims database of unstructured data, of notes, just claims notes from the adjusters, and come back with insights that were meaningful and useful. And it's like, wow, that's amazing. And that got me really interested. Um, and I started attending, going up to the Bay Area, attending tech conferences, getting involved in angel groups as an angel investor, trying to say, okay, I want to see what's going on in technology. I've been missing out. What I wanted to do is now here, and I want to get involved in that. I need to do something in that space. And so got excited, spent more and more time in technology and helping startups and starting to invest in a lot of startups with small checks as an angel investor. And fast forward by 2014, I was really excited about technology and spending more time on that, and kind of not enjoying as much coming back to my day job. Both companies were getting big, and it was all about compliance and HR and legal and so forth, and less about product and less about building something. And I decided, in a drastic move, to say hire investment bankers and get out of both of my operating businesses so I can focus full time on being a technology investor. And that's what I did. And within 2 years, I got out of everything. And wind up selling Alliance United Insurance Company, was the auto underwriter at the time, sold that to Kemper in 2014, stayed on for 2 years with Kemper, which was interesting. But meanwhile, got really deep on technology and on angel investing and technology, kept on doing that. By 2019, after about 5 years of angel investing, a partner and I decided to make a small fund. So, because there was a lot of other people from my prior life that were curious what I was doing, and when they find out I'm investing in technology and they were so excited about it, they're like, "That's cool. Let me know next time you're doing a deal. I'll write a check too." And so, I had enough people say that where I said, let me make a small fund. I'll pull our money, and we can write bigger checks and have a little more formal process and so forth, and let's do it right. And back then there was it was pretty common. There was a lot of angel investors that started up little micro VC funds. So we made Emerging Ventures Fund 1 in 2019. Then 2021 launched a little bigger fund 2, and now we're on our third vehicle. And it's time flies. It's 2025, so it's 6 years now into doing this as a fund, and probably about 15 years total that I've been investing in technology as an angel investor.
That's wonderful. That's unbelievable. Um, I really appreciate your insight and the global view. Um, then let's break it down, or let's talk about emerging venture. I'm not sure I understood exactly when you started, but what's the origin story there, and
Mhm,
what gap were you trying to fill in the venture
mhm.
space when you launched it?
Right. So Emerging Ventures Capital launched its first fund in 2019, and that was me transitioning from investing just my own money as an angel investor to saying, let's pool the money of, let's say 20 something of our associates, people I know from my prior life in business, and we'll create a vehicle and invest as a fund. And that's what I did. And Fund One, which launched in 2019, and shortly after COVID hit, and that was interesting. But we made 28 investments from Fund One. Then in 2021, we launched Fund Two, and we made 43 investments from Fund Two, and now we're on our third investment vehicle, and so far I've made 4 investments from the third vehicle. And we continue to invest. Our thesis is pretty simple. So as an angel investor, especially in the beginning, I did a little bit of everything until I narrowed my focus and figured out what my thesis was over time. As a fund, we have a pretty narrow thesis. We invest in seed stage, US and Canada based B2B tech startups that are using emerging technologies to solve business challenges. And in particular, underwriting wise, we have a big focus on execution. So, we look for 3 things. We look for startups that can build something, they can sell it, and the right customers are willing to pay for it. So we're all about execution and traction. So we don't invest at the early pre-seed stage. We don't invest in ideas. We invest in real companies that have a real product and real customers, and that are really solving some pain for businesses or helping businesses be more efficient in some way. And we look for the fact that they have a repeatable, scalable sales process so that they are going to be venture scaled. There's a lot of great startups out there that should be small businesses and should stay, private and not be venture backed. And not every business is meant to be venture backed. So to make sure that they're venture backed and can go on to scale and kind of graduate from us and raise more money at much higher valuations in the future and eventually have a great exit, we want to make sure that they have that repeatable, scalable sales process that can really grow at a venture scale and not just the founder slowly making one sale at a time to their network.
Awesome. Um, you have backed over 500 companies personally. What does deal flow and filtering look like for you at this stage?
Yeah, so where I am today, deal flow is somewhat overwhelming. It's a constant struggle, actually, to not lose the quality within the noise of the volume. I see at least 30 deals on average a day, every day. There's probably not a day that I don't see 30 plus.
Wow.
Um, they don't stop. If I'm out in an event or traveling for a day, they still pile up. uh, and uh, but I actually try to minimize that. We try to go out of our way to be as transparent as we can about what we do and what we don't do, so that they can startups can self-filter out and not submit to us if they're not on thesis or on stage for us. We narrowed our filters. We only do US and Canada. We only do our particular stage. We only do what we do. So we don't do anything else. We don't do consumer products. We don't do any direct to consumer brands. We don't do any, you know, apps. We don't do anything in marketplaces or social or entertainment. We don't do anything in healthcare. No medical devices. No biotech. I don't know life sciences. I'm not smart enough to deal with those. There's really smart people every day, teams of MD PhDs that are trying to cure one kind of cancer or another. And I applaud them for that. And they all look amazing. I know that, barely 1% of those will ever succeed. And I can't tell them apart. They all look amazing to me. So I just don't invest in any of them. That's kind of one of my rules. If there's a lot of something and they all look amazing, and yet I know that most will fail and I can't tell which ones, then I just don't invest in any of them, because otherwise there'd almost be like randomly selecting them. I have no way to judge them and say, yes, you're going to make it, though you're not going to make it, and then put my bet on one or the other. Or it'd almost be like putting my money on roulette in Vegas. I really can't tell them apart. So I just don't invest in that. And despite all that, we still get a lot of volume. And it's a mixture of everything. Having been doing this for 15 years, I'm on a lot of lists. I'm on a lot of other, both public lists and a lot of obviously private Rolodexes of other investors. So, I get invited into a lot of deals, a lot of other investors. As much as you see all the headlines about how cutthroat the business is and the competition for to lead rounds in certain startups is, it's actually a very collaborative space. And especially at the seed round, investors want to know that other investors are also investing. They don't want to be the only one writing a check. So if a startup's raising say $2.5–3 million on a seed round, you might have someone who looked at a deal and said, "Yeah, I want to write $1 million check or a $500,000 check or maybe a $2 million check, but I don't want to be alone." And they will share it with other investors in their network that they respect and they know can act fast. So I see a lot of deals where someone else already looked at them and decided to invest, and they're inviting me to come in, and that's awesome. Those are some of the best deals. I get a lot of referrals every day just from being out there and having spoken to thousands of founders and thousands of other investors. So even deals that others don't do, that are too early or too late for them, they will refer to me. There's a lot of pre-seed investors that invest earlier than we do that then send their deals to me when they're raising their second round, their price seed
Yeah.
round, after they've already, some other investor, whether an angel group or an individual or a VC fund that does pre-seed or has invested, let's say, a year ago in a pre-seed round on a convertible note or a safe. Now they're ready to raise a price seed round, and they'll send it to myself as well as others to say, "Hey, we invested in these guys last year. They've made this kind of progress since they're raising another round. We think it's a fit for your thesis. Take a look." So I get those every day. And then there's all the traditional sources. There's a lot of amazing accelerator programs out there, and I think quite a few of them do a really good job. Obviously, everyone knows Y Combinator, and YC just had their recent demo day for their uh, spring batch. It just finished. But besides them, there's many, many other accelerator programs that do an equally well job, and some are region specific, some are industry specific or vertical specific, and some are generalist. So I actually send a lot of startups to accelerators when they come to me and they're early and they say it's too early for us, and they say, "Well, what should I do?" And in many cases, I refer them to a handful of accelerators that may be appropriate for them. If they apply here, and when you come out of there, you might be ready. But that's your best next step. I think accelerator programs do an amazing job for an early stage startup that kind of needs to go from MVP to getting some early customer traction and getting put in front of uh, investors when it's time for their full round. Um, it, I see that work magic for a lot of startups that probably would have struggled much longer and harder, or maybe not have made it if they didn't go through a program. So, in my opinion, those programs are well worth the equity you take. I wouldn't worry about the money and time that you're going to put into them. I would say go for those accelerator programs. Apply, if any startup founders that are early, they're listening to this and are not sure what to do next or not sure about accelerator programs, it's like, in my opinion, they're well worth it. More than half of our portfolio in emerging ventures has been through an accelerator program, either before or after I invested. Usually before we invested, but not always. Some have gone into programs or were going into them as I invested, and some have even gone into multiple programs after I invested. But and they're probably only 10% of the deal flow we see, but they represent more than 50% of our portfolio, which shows the difference in quality. Those who have gone through an accelerator program and come out are much more likely to be investable and be venture backable than those who have not. So I'm not associated with any accelerator program, but over 15 years of seeing, attending demo days and talking to the leadership at some of these programs, doing investor office hours for them and so forth, being involved in the ecosystem, I've grown to appreciate the value they add. I came in skeptical and came out a believer. I'm a strong believer in accelerator programs and love the deal flow that comes out. Some more than others, but then again, it's my preferences of what I like to invest in. If there's a program that focuses on life sciences, that wouldn't be for me. There's some great ones that do that. That's not me, obviously. If they're focusing, if they're generalists or doing a lot of B2B SaaS, then that is me. And again, there's others doing other regions. There's specific accelerator programs for Europe, for Southeast Asia, and other regions for the, uh, even South and Central America. There's some great LATAM accelerator programs, do an amazing job, and they will get them in shape, and then at the end, get them in front of the appropriate also global investor base. Maybe help them set up a Delaware C Corp as a holding company and make them investable into the US more easily. But they really do amazing things. I've seen um, startups from India and from Brazil, from Europe, from all over the world. Once they go through these accelerators, I would not be able to invest in them when they were international. But once they went through these programs, they became investable to us because they helped them do that flip and set up the proper structure where now they're safe for us to invest in as U.S. entities.
So, yeah, that's very, very interesting. And how are AI and automation reshaping the way funders build and raise capital?
Ooh, that's a loaded question, obviously, and that's changing by the day. What I say today, by the time this gets published, might be different. 'Cause it's literally moving that fast. Uh, um, AI is very quickly changing workflows for every business everywhere. That's just a fact. Um, you can't look at any publication without reading something about that. It's disrupting everything everywhere, and very rapidly so. Um, Y Combinator on their last batch, not this batch, published already that um, more than 50% of the startups in that batch had more than 80% of their code generated by AI, despite the founders being technical and able to code it themselves if they had to. So AI generated code is everywhere. Um, Building an MVP can be done now in a weekend instead of months and months, which really turned the investment side upside down on its head. My main parameter used to be show me you can build something, because building an MVP used to take some time and effort. And a lot of startups are trying to raise money in order to build an MVP. And I say, no, go back, build it, and come back and then come back. And nowadays, they can build an MVP over a weekend with some of the AI tools. If you're really good at stringing together the right AI tools, and you have, you know, a couple of gritty, smart kids, can literally and have literally popped out pretty solid MVPs, fully functional software in a weekend or two, while they still have day jobs. And they can even get some solid early traction on it. They can go out there and get some users excited because they're all these products now have some crazy new fun tools. They can be, say, customizing AI for a particular problem lawyers are having, or and accountants or anything else, right? And they can go show it to a few of them who would be like, yeah, this is cool. I want to use this. And they'll play with it, friend. They'll use it. And so they can go out there within a month and say, hey, we're a startup and we built this MVP and we're solving this problem for lawyers. And we already have, 5 lawyers using it and 20 more on a wait list. And it can sound like it's an amazing company when in fact it's a little side project that they built in 2 weekends while they have day jobs. So yeah, it really turned the world upside down. That used to take months and months of hard work. And so nowadays it takes very little money and not that much effort in the ground scale. It could be like a low weekend project and you can have a real company, or it appears to be a real company. So for me, as for a
Awesome.
founder now, it's super easy. for an investor, it's becoming harder and harder to figure out what's a real company and what's not, and whether or not it's worth investing in. Um, because obviously you're sitting there thinking, it's like, okay, well, if these guys did this in 2 weeks, what's special about it? What's their moat? Um, and what's stopping 10 other teams from doing the same thing? They're basically, and eventually they will. So that's the downside, and that's the biggest thing that's changed. So for myself, I actually just posted a blog post this weekend about that topic because I was reading the stats of the graduating class of YC, and there's a lot of noise about how more than half of the startups were AI startups, and that YC was specifically encouraging and looking for AI startups, and that all makes sense. They always go all in on the next big thing, but they have a model where they're almost like an index fund. So, you know, AI agents is a hot topic now. It's great. And for the YC batch, this will be their AI agent batch. And they wind up having, I think, 46 of those in the batch. It's like, okay. And they got to choose from thousands. They have thousands and thousands of applications. So they get to choose, the 50 brightest teams in AI and put them all in a room together for 3 months and see what comes out. And they write a small check to each. And at the end of the day, if 40 of them fail, but if a couple of them become big hits eventually, they become the next Amazon or Google's of the era, that's a huge win for them. Unfortunately for myself as an investor, I'm not an index fund. I'm not doing a batch model. So, if there's 46 of them, I know most will fail. And they all seem, it's like, okay. Uh, so I'm taking the same approach I'm doing with life sciences. It's I can't tell them apart. I don't invest in any of them. So at the moment, I'm a little frustrated. As much as I love AI and I love where it's going, it's changing so fast and it's so easy to do that I'm just not investing in any of them right now. I'm waiting to see how things shape up and where it kind of settles down. Uh, and because if I chose, let's say I do about 1 or 2 deals per quarter into our fund on average. Well, if I chose 2 AI startups this quarter out of thousands, let's say one of them happened to be one of the YC ones, and I chose another one that wasn't a YC one. What's the chances that they're actually it out of these thousands and thousands and thousands of AI startups? There's not going to be room for all of them. I've seen probably already 1,000 AI startups just for legal. Every week there's a few legal related startups, each doing something a little different. So there must have been over the last year over 1,000 of them. There's no room for 1,000 you know, just for the law industry. There'll be a few winners that will definitely take off eventually, but I don't know which ones they are. And I might have not even seen them. The ones that might end up being winners might have not even been in my deal flow. So I'm just not investing in any of them right now because I figure, they'll all get 99% of them will not survive. And the ones that will might not even exist yet today. They might, so it's just so early and it's changing so fast and it's so easy, which is the other thing, because other things in the past have been early, but they weren't as easy. And I said, I drew a parallel from this and I'm old enough to have been there, to the internet bubble in the late 90s, where everyone had to put a .com in their name and everyone went to build it. And most of them didn't make a lot of sense and weren't making any money. But anything with a .com got funded and 99% of those failed. And yes, there was a few survivors that made the whole batch worth it, like the Amazon. Um, but for every one Amazon, there was thousands and thousands of others where obviously the most common example, everyone always talks about pets.com that raised hundreds of millions of dollars and then failed. But there was thousands and thousands and thousands of others. There was everything you can think of .com, and they were relatively easy to spin up at the time, but not nearly as easy it is to spin up a really fancy looking AI based startup today. Because OpenAI, Google with Gemini, whatever, they all provide APIs and they provide a ton of free credits to new startups because they all want to get the startups hooked on their ecosystem. So they give you hosting space, they give you free credits for the tokens for their API. You can go out there and build a nice little user interface that, and you can do that using AI tools that will code it for you. And there you go. Over a weekend, you have this cool product that's doing something that looks really nice for some vertical, for somebody somewhere. Um, you know, maybe it helps accountants,
Yeah.
you know, take banking information and put it into QuickBooks and do some other cool things with it. Who knows? And there's a gazillion of those already out there, but it does something for somebody that solves a problem. Like, hey, we built this tool, and we have all these businesses using it. Um, and now we want to raise money so that we can make this our full-time job, basically. uh, Although they're not quite saying it that way, but they want to, and they want to raise, like, say, $2 million at a $10 million valuation on a safe, when it took them 2 weekends to build a product. And it's like, okay, but you're doing that, and 1,000 other people are doing something similar, and what's going to make you eventually survive all the permutations and turn this into a real business where everyone else is going to fail? Because I know that there's too many of these out there, and most of them are going to fail. So that's a big dilemma for investors like myself today. And for that reason, as much as I'm super excited about where AI is and what's happening and how it's going to change our lives and our children's lives, and um, I am skeptical about investing in the current batch.
Yeah. No, it's understandable. So many of them. Um, and decision fatigue también. You don't know which one to choose. Um, let's flip the coin for a moment. And what are some of the hardest challenges that you have faced building the fund, or even just navigating the market,
Hmm.
this market?
Yeah, good question. So, honestly, the hardest part is fundraising ourselves, which helps us appreciate how hard it is for founders. So, getting the first set of LPs from our own network, getting 20 something former associates who knew me, who respected me in my prior business, is the easy part, because they're like, oh, they know me, they know what I did in business before, they were happy to work with me, they trust me, and they're like, okay, if that's what David's doing now, I'll invest with him. I want to do what he's doing. But that's limited to my circle. If I go out there to people who don't know me, it's a tough sell. That's a very crowded space as well. There's hundreds of small VCs, and it's hard to stand out, and fundraising is difficult, and it really requires a full process. So that is really hard and something I don't necessarily enjoy doing. So that's the most challenging part that makes me sometimes, you know, decide whether or not I want to do more of that, and how small I want to keep it, just limited, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm keeping the fund on the smaller side so I can stick to people I know, and I don't want to feel like I have a boss, and I don't want to have to do things that I don't want to do. So to keep control and do things my way, I rather keep it smaller. A third of each of our funds was my own money, as it is. I'm my biggest, in a sense, LP. It was this, besides being the GP, and I'm just having my friends. I just feel like, okay, I'm having my friends co-invest with me, and I like to keep that attitude about it, where, as opposed to feel like it's a real business, although it is. Um, but that's how I treat that, and that's the most difficult part. As far as making investments, as I was saying before, I guess deal flow is amazing, but things are moving so fast, and trying to know what to invest in is quite challenging too. Trying to predict the future is always a losing bet. And that's why I continue to focus on execution. I kind of double down on execution. I'm looking for businesses that really show me they have a repeatable, scalable sales process. So I'm going further and further into traction and investing later and later stage, less and less in the early stage, and looking for really solid traction where, okay, it's not just a coincidence that you got a few early customers, but you actually have a sales funnel and have solid enterprise contracts and can do that again and again. You can have this funnel, and I see how you're going to close more and bigger enterprise contracts going forward, and that's what gets me now feel comfortable in this in these times about what to invest in. And I'm investing in a wider range of technologies. I'm looking for things that I didn't even know exist. So some really cool things out there that are just different. And there might be things I don't understand very well, but that's okay, as long as they're smart people that are building something that's been proven to be useful to their customers, and their customers love it. And they can show me that they have more potential customers that want to buy it. And I can go through their projections with them and see that this will be venture scale and be profitable. It's like, okay, that's where I'm going to bet today. So, it's been a wide range of startups. If you go through our portfolio, online on emerging.vc. We have there's a portfolio page. It has every company we ever invested in. Uh, they're quite a quite a variety. It's not just AI and it's not just software. We've done some interesting things out there. I mean, I say kind of as a joke, we do everything from ad tech to ag tech. Uh, so, we've invested in agriculture solutions for farmers, and we've invested
Wow.
in some marketing tools
Sure.
for advertisers.
Yeah, I see that you have. I saw it. A fascinating company in your portfolio, like a Banarly or Blurred uh, Omnitron sensor.
Hmm.
What excited you most about the problem these teams are solving?
Hmm. So those two you mentioned are more deep tech, and they're both kind of inventing new tools. It's new. They have actual IP. They're smart researchers that are building new tools for industry. So they're solving niche problems for industry, and in unique ways. So it's taking some intellectual property that's unique to them. It's not just another software tool. Um, now, Binarly
I
that you
see.
mentioned is in the cybersecurity space, internet security, and but there's a ton of those. That's a huge crowded space. What
Yeah.
caught my attention with them is that they're building for a different segment of it. They were building something for firmware. So firmware is the software that's embedded on the chips in circuit boards and devices of all kinds, and you know any electronic device nowadays, from a smart TV to whatever. But they're going after, like, say, routers and others. So they come. There's some team that were ex Cisco, and they really understand some of the networking equipment, and they're building security that's going to check firmware updates to make sure no one's putting a backdoor into the firmware updates that are going into the routers, which is a huge potential problem. And so it's a really niche product for industry, but yet it's a pretty big market of enterprise customers like the Ciscos of the world that would need to buy that license, that software from them, because they're doing it better than anyone else. So it's true IP about a they're very smart people in a very particular niche area solving something that's niche yet big enough to be meaningful and have a meaningful exit. And that's kind of the combination that attracts me. Smart people solving problems that they know very well, and that there's a big enough market. Because sometimes those niche problems are just niche, and they're not, there might be two customers in the world for it. But so you have to make sure it's a big enough problem too. And that was one of those that is, that fits that bill, where it's small but yet big enough to have, you know, many large enterprises globally that will need their product. And that's a typical thing, that we look for. And, there's things as um, on the other extreme, like um, trying to turn so items in synthetic biology. I say I don't know life sciences, but in this case, there's a PhD team coming out of university. I believe it was out of Toronto, but I know they're a Canadian company, and there was a team of PhDs that developed some process in their postdoc work at the university of turning organic waste matter into a biodegradable plastic. And I guess you can put air quotes around plastic, because if it's biodegradable, it's not really a plastic, it's not oil based. But it's a plastic, in my mind, it's a plastic substitute. But they came out with this biodegradable plastic film, and they had a pilot with Procter and Gamble, you know, and this was probably 5 years ago when I first invested in it. And they were basically, like, for example, a multi-pack of deodorant or anything on the shelf. It's going to have this thin film of plastic that holds them together as a pack. Um, Instead of
Okay.
making that out of plastic, they make this out of this new biodegradable plastic, out of this film that they're making out of organic waste matter. So basically, your trash, your banana peels are becoming a plastic. And that's really cool, because when you throw this back in the ground, it is biodegradable. It becomes it composts just like the bananas would, and
Yeah.
that's awesome. So that's and the fact that Procter and Gamble, I can't tell if their IP is worth anything, if this is good or not, but the fact that Procter and Gamble, we talked to a VP there who's running that program, that they went through their lab, and they say, yes, we looked at like 100 guys trying to do something like this, and these guys are the real deal. We're choosing them to do our part. So, if a customer like Procter and Gamble tells me this is the real deal, we're excited about it, then I'm willing to invest. It's like, okay, if Procter and Gamble's in on it, that's good enough for me. I'm in on it. It still might fail, but there was far enough along where I thought that's where the risk reward made sense. At the valuation that we came in, at the time we came in, uh, we decided to make a bet on that company, and they've done pretty well. They've gone on and raised a nice Series A and Series B since, from brand name VCs like Sequoia. Raised much larger checks at much higher valuations, and they still got a long way to go. It's a long struggle. It's not the kind of thing that becomes an instant success, but I will make some asymmetric bets of that nature where it's already de-risked by having the customer. If they came to me before Procter and Gamble and just say, yeah, we're these guys in the lab and we have this thing and we think there's some industry applications and we want to raise money to go commercialize it. And I'm kind of paraphrasing the kind of pitch I hear all day, every day. I have to say no to that all day long, because I have no way to vet theirs, know who else is doing it, who might be doing it even better, and whether it's even something really special or not. And I have no idea to see if these guys know how to sell it to industry. But by having a paid pilot with Procter and Gamble, it's like, okay, you solved all those problems. You showed me that it's real. You vetted the technology for me. And you show me that somehow, besides just being nerdy researchers in a lab, you're more than that. You actually know how to reach out to industry, get their attention, and make a sale, an enterprise sale. That's amazing. That's a combined skill that very few founding teams have. And you need to put that together. The ability, from a researcher to turn into a business person that can get the attention of industry and make enterprise sales and sign contracts. Combining that is the successful founding team, in my opinion. That's what I look for. That's my
Yeah, that sounds
definition
great.
of execution.
Fair enough. Um, Looking into 2025 or beyond, what gets you excited? What kind of companies or technology do you think will define the next wave?
Now, it's definitely agentic AI, and then also physical world AI. There's a lot coming in. There's a lot of talk now about robotics and bringing AI to the physical world, not just the virtual world. And I think that's where according to everything I'm reading today and from what I'm starting to see in the startup world, I think that's where it's headed. But then again, the future always surprises me. So I don't want to make predictions. But in the near future, I think that's the direction they're going in. And yeah, I don't know if we want to start wrapping up. I think I've been talking for a while, and we're getting near to the end of this hour.
No, I mean this is your hour. It's perfect. Is there, in your opinion, is there a blind spot in VC or startup culture that you think more people should be paying attention to?
Hmm, it's a good question. Um, I don't know if there's anything that's being missed today. What I see over and over and over is, and I think it's just a human psychology, is too much focus on what's hot at the moment and ignoring everything else. And so it's that sense of bubble cycles. I, you know, and going all in on whatever is hot. And during COVID in the beginning, it was telehealth, and every day I saw like 10 telehealth company startups. And it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. We need telehealth, but we don't need 1,000 of them. And
Yeah.
then it was NFTs, and it was, I mean, obviously we had blockchain was cool, and I started to see every company go on the blockchain, whether they needed blockchain or not. And then it was NFTs, and everyone was trying to do NFTs. We even had some portfolio companies pivot into minting NFTs, where I was saying just like, what the hell are you doing? Getting distracted with NFTs. But everyone had that FOMO, the fear of missing out. And I think
Yeah.
our industry is a constant FOMO loop.
You're right.
And today it's so it was generative AI last year. Now it's agentic AI. We're almost over
Yeah.
the generative AI part. It's like, okay, everyone knows you can generate text, you can generate images, and it's like whatever. So for a while, a year ago it was all generative AI. Today, at the moment, it's all agentic AI. It's having AI agents.
Mm.
So in whatever form and of all kinds, personal and business. And next, I think is physical AI, AI for the physical world. And
Excellent.
but to answer your question, it's really the FOMO loop. It's the too much focus on what's hot at the moment and ignoring everything else. That's the biggest blind spot. So if everybody is trying to invest in agentic AI, what about the rest of the world? What about everything else? The world didn't stop needing, um, you know, um, everything else that we needed before, and tools for everything else. And you know, so like synthetic biology, for example, that we're talking about, it's like, wait a minute, we still need that. Plastic's still bad. uh, we still, and we still need, I mean, things like carbon capture, or they were really cool a while ago. Now I think they're a little neglected, and yet there's some startups doing that better than ever before. There's some startups I saw that are literally pulling carbon out of the air,
Mhm.
and I think that's pretty cool. There was one that was making diamonds out of air. They were like pulling carbon out of the air and then turning it into diamonds. It's like, wow,
Incredible.
pretty
Yeah.
cool. I don't know if it's something I would invest in today. It's not in my area of expertise, but there's things like that, and I think they're not getting enough attention because the focus is somewhere else.
Okay, fair enough. And any advice for funders building in 2025, especially those tackling complex and capital intensive problems?
Hmm. I shy away from capital intense problems.
Okay.
Uh, I invest in capital efficient startups, and that's in our
Yeah, excellent.
tagline, for that reason, because it's really difficult to do capital intense. So I don't have good advice for that. You might want to start with a
Okay.
smaller problem that you can solve. It might be, incremental progress is really important. See what you can do, how you can build a light proof of concept. And For founders in general, I would say stay away from the hype, build something that is solving a problem, and then double down on it. Ship early, ship often. You know, um, try to. launch something and see what customers really want, and then double down on that and see where
Try
it takes you.
try and
And
error.
because,
Yeah,
yeah, where you're going to wind up is different than what you thought. So don't spend too much time trying to think what the product should look like, how it should work. Just build something, solve someone's problem a little, and then work with them to solve a bigger problem or make the product even better. And ask them what, and keep on iterating, and it will surprise you. And
makes sense. Fantastic. That's very good advice. Oh, that's great. I just love it. I loved our conversation. That has been a phenomenal conversation. Basically, your ability to bridge deep technical insight with practical investing wisdom is rare and incredibly valuable.
thank
And
you.
thank you very much, David. Um, and for listeners who want to follow your work, where's the best place to keep up with you?
Um, I have a pretty public profile. Our fund is transparent. Emerging.vc is the site for the fund. Personally, I maintain a blog. I send out a monthly newsletter with just interesting insights about what I see in tech and in investing. And that's davidmandel.blog or just mandel.blog. They'll both get you to my personal blog page, and you can sign up for my newsletter, and you'll just get like a once a month um, you know, email with links to 3 or 4 interesting articles, including some blog posts that I penned myself and link to some other interesting articles from around the web.
Fantastic. I love it. I go for it. Uh, Thank you, David, for taking the time. It was very nice. And that's it for today's episode of AI Interconnect. If you enjoyed it, share it with someone who is building the future, or better yet, someone who should be. And until next time, stay curious, stay creative, and keep building. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Laura.